for purposes of clarification, I do lead the community development group for the Mid-Atlantic region, not for the whole bank, please. Several people over here. I'm going to touch on three things: challenges, opportunities, and what are funders looking for. I'm going to do a little bit of jumping back and forth between philanthropy and financing, because I know that you are all interested in both. So challenges, here we go. Real quick, you know what they are. I don't need to tell you. From the funding perspective, though, we do face many of the same challenges. Many foundations have fewer resources or flat budgets and significantly more demand. And that unfortunately means that we have to sometimes make some really difficult choices. Really tough. On the financing side, the world now, and I think my friends from banks will agree, the world is ruled by risk and credit considerations. Credit standards and expectations have tightened over the last several years. We have increased scrutiny by regulators, which means that lenders often proceed very cautiously and are very thorough. They may call you again and again and again to ask questions. Be patient with them. Doesn't mean they don't want to do it. It just means that they want to make sure that we've got all the process covered. Finally, there are changes in federal regulations or in the interpretation of regulations, especially with regard, as you all know, to mortgage lending, which also present challenges for financial institutions. I'm going to start with the Neighborhood Revitalization Tax Credit Program. Is Brad here? No. Okay. For those of you who already participate in the program, you know what an opportunity this presents. The administration actually seems to like this program, so we can hope that it's not going away, and in fact that maybe there might be some opportunity to expand the program. It's also appealing to businesses for a lot of reasons, not least of which is that the credit we receive is immediate, and we only have to make a one-year commitment. Now, we all want to make multi-year commitments, but we can take that in chunks each year as we see, what the appetite for tax credits is. So that's one great opportunity, as many of you know. I want to talk a little bit about the Urban Transit Hub Tax Credit Program, and there's a little bit of information on this handout. I'm not going to go through it all. I encourage you to look at it. It has some upsides. It has some maybe not so upsides. One of the big upsides is that it's huge. It's a huge program. It's capped at $1.5 billion, with $150 million allocated towards residential projects, which they can receive actually a higher credit than the commercial aspects of the project. And it goes towards, some of you may be familiar with the renovation project that's underway around the New Brunswick train station. This is a project that's taking advantage of this tax credit, and TD Bank is actually an investor. We've taken advantage of this credit in that project. Projects have to be within a half a mile of an urban transit hub station. There's all kinds of definition about what that is, with the exception of Camden, where the projects can actually be up to a mile away. They're big. They're big projects. You're probably going to need to create a partnership to carry out a project of this magnitude. TD Bank's investment in the New Brunswick project alone is going to be $20 million. It's huge. There's a lot of capacity in the program, but it's challenging for investors because they have to commit to use their liability over several years, which means they have to have a pretty good sense of what their tax liability is going to be, and that's a difficult thing to estimate in this environment. The developer's going to need a bridge loan. So an investor that's looking at a project like this is also going to be looking at the creditworthiness of the development team, because we know they're going to need a loan, and we want to know that the project's going to get finished, and they're going to pay back their loan, and therefore that makes the investment a good thing to do. Your likely investors in this program are going to have to be AA or AAA rated corporations with significant long-term New Jersey tax liability. There are not a lot of those right now. Okay, so that's one of the downsides. Corporations that invest in this program may sort of use up all of their appetite for tax credits over a significant period of time, and that has the potential to impact programs like the NRTC. If we have made a decision in 2012 to invest $20 million, for which we're going to get $27 million in tax credits over 8 years. Are we going to have additional tax liability to be able to use for programs like the NRTC? Just things you should know. The New Jersey Department of Transportation has some interesting programs, again, keeping with the transportation theme, around urban hubs, urban gateways. This first one is an opportunity to create jobs for youth. So if that's something that your organization has a program for, then that might be a program you might want to look at. Safe Routes to Schools is another. These are both federal programs. The money came from the federal government. It's being administered by the Department of Transportation to encourage kids to walk to school. This program, if this fits within something you're doing, you might want to look at it quickly, because at this point, they're only accepting applications through the end of the year. That could change, but right now, that's what the website says. So what are financial institutions looking for? We could have a long conversation about this, and happy to. One of the not so secret secrets is that whether it's for a grant or for a loan, what we're looking at, what we like to see, is not really so different. More than ever, I would say foundations, philanthropic foundations, are looking for impact. That's tricky. How do you define impact? It's not an easy thing to define. And everybody defines it or looks at it a little bit different, and looks at it a little bit on a case-by-case basis, but it can include things like the size and scope of a project, the degree to which a project or an initiative uniquely addresses a need in the community. Is it the only game in town? Are you providing something that nobody else is doing? Is it replicable? Are you adopting a unique approach? We heard a lot of unique approaches today from some of your colleagues on this panel. Those are all sort of considerations and things that funders think about when they're thinking about impact. Always make sure that when you approach a philanthropic funder, you're asking for grant funds, or even if it's a loan, you need to make sure that what you're asking for fits within the organization's strategic focus. That's your organization's strategic focus. New programs are not necessarily better programs from the perspective of a funder or a lender. To quote my colleague Renee, she likes to say that the funders, that at TD Bank anyway, at the Charitable Foundation, we like to date before we get married. I love it. So it's about building a relationship, about trying to really understand each other, where we're going, where we're coming from, what your needs are, what our needs are. And when you approach a funder, be open. You might go in thinking you're looking for the answer to one question, but you might come out of the meeting with an answer to a different question. And that I encourage groups to be open to that. There's a lot of emphasis on volunteerism. Maybe that's a way to meet some needs in your organization. And it may not be what you came to talk to me about, but maybe if we talk long enough, we might find an opportunity, and then that'll be just another way that we can work together. Financial stability cannot be said enough. I know that's an easy thing to say right now, today, and harder to do. But we know that we know the way nonprofit organizations function and work. We know the kinds of work you do, but we need to know that, like Renee said, that when we send the check out or when we sign that loan agreement, we're not doing it with crossed fingers. We want to have a really good idea or a really good, understanding that it's going to work. Funding institutions now more than ever have a laser-like focus on their giving priorities, so do your homework. Don't approach us if your organization or the initiative that you're thinking about isn't a solid fit. It's fine to talk to us about what you're working on, and we can explore whether it's a fit or not. But there are going to be times when what you're working on, as valuable as it is and as important as it is, may just not be the right fit for one particular institution. And last, I'll say, read all the instructions, read all the guidelines, go to the website first, and follow them, okay? While I'm not going to stand here and say we're perfect all the time, if we're asking you to wear belts and suspenders, it's most likely because we've been asked to wear the belt and suspenders too, and maybe 2 times over. The regulators from several different regulating agencies live at our office. We provide them. We have to provide them office space. We've had something like over 200 internal audits this year. It's tough, you know. We are under tremendous scrutiny, and if we're asking you to make sure your pants stay on, it's because everybody wants to know, how are we making sure his pants stay on?
You probably know that a few of us are getting gray hairs, even though we cover them up nicely. In the next 5 to 7 years, some of us will be retiring. Don't tell my board. But that change in leadership and organizations can be a real shift. How do funders look at that?
Good question.
That's a great question. And I'm hesitating only because I'm trying to decide whether I speak for myself here or whether I speak for funders. It's an issue. I'm blonde, so I don't know if my gray hairs are showing, but it's an issue. We look at leadership of organizations, although we understand that the leader is not just the executive director, CEO, or president, or whatever, how many titles you have to carry, but also what's happening with the board. That we see that as a key part of the organization, and you know, it's never just about the CEO. It's never just about the board. It is about all of that, but it's also about what's your track record. What is your strategic vision and plan? How sort of defined is that? How in tune are the organizations, the staff of the organization or the organization with what those documents are? And that's how we get a sense of how ingrained in the culture of the organization is, you know, is this